Welcome back to the Mike and Andrew Show. I'm Andrew Surrock here with Mike Meredith. Mike, it's your birthday. Happy birthday. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing great, man. It was a great day. Thank you for the happy birthday, man.
Yeah, no problem, man. No problem. So, lots to talk about. So, let's get right into it. NFL review, Week 6, Thursday night. The Chiefs hosted the Broncos division matchup. The Chiefs won 19-8. Um, Look, man, I gotta tell you, the Chiefs don't look good this year at all, man. They still average roughly 20 points a game. And this is a game where you should beat the Broncos by, you know, way more than just 11 points. Um, and they just couldn't get going against this really bad Broncos offense or defense. I mean,
Yeah, this Broncos defense, they gave up 70 to Miami, man. Yeah, Kansas City doesn't look that great on offense this year, man. Definitely not like years past. I mean, they are 5-1, only lost being to Detroit, but yeah, they just don't look as dominant this year. But I mean, look at Russell Wilson, man. I knew that uh, the Broncos stood no chance, man. Only 8 points. I mean, he's just washed.
yeah, I mean it was just it was just not one of those good games for the Chiefs. And look, I don't even know if they're the favorite in the AFC right now because I mean I know starting the season they were the betting favorite, but it's they've just not looked good. Um, so yeah, I don't know what's not working there, but just something offensively is just not clicking right now for the Chiefs. Detroit went down into Tampa and they won and they won very handedly, 20-6. Look, this was kind of a trap game in a way because the Bucks are a first place team coming off a bye, and you have a lot of injuries, and the Lions just persevered and won. I mean that was really a statement game right there from Detroit.
Yeah, it was, man. I mean, like you said, Tampa being off the bye, and um, you'd think they'd be a lot more fresh. They pretty much hounded Baker Mayfield all game. He didn't do much of anything. Let's talk about JMO coming in, going crazy with that TD. Allen Ra coming back with that TD. Montgomery went out early, and they still were able to get something going. Good game from the Lions, man.
Yeah, Craig Reynolds stepped in and he did a good enough job. But Jared Goff, man, he had an incredible game. I mean, he was perfect. He took the when Montgomery went down, Jared Goff just he put the team on his shoulders literally, and I mean, yeah, the catch by Jamo was great. He also had that really bad drop that he should have had. And then that block by
That block, Josh Reynolds.
by Josh Reynolds, man, that for that Amon-Ra touchdown, that was insane. I mean, like you could hear just how hard that hit was when it happened, man. It was yeah, that was just awesome. But yeah, I mean, look, the Lions, they dealt with. I mean, they had so many injuries. Montgomery went down, and like I said, Goff stepped up, man. And you got to put some respect on Jared Goff now, man. He's just performing at such a high level.
Yeah, man. He's been great.
Just incredible. And the the Bucks defense, the offensive line held up against the Bucks defense, and they blitz a lot, and they didn't get to Jared Goff a lot, so you got to give credit to them too. Um, the Ravens and the Titans played in London. Ravens won 24-16. Um, I mean, the Ravens handled business. That's all it was. I mean, they didn't look spectacular doing it, but they did it. And man, the Titans are just so bad, dude. I don't even know
Yeah.
how. Like, Tannehill looks like shit. They Derrick Henry hasn't been able to do a whole lot. It's just kind of embarrassing.
Yeah, man. Both teams really didn't play that well. I mean, Baltimore, I know they won the game, but they had like 5 or 6 field goals. It was crazy. Like, Lamar did nothing in the red zone. They just couldn't get any touchdowns in that game. See how they fare next week, man. We got Detroit, so it's gonna be Baltimore and Detroit. So hopefully Detroit can win that game.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Look, I think we'll preview this on Thursday's episode, but yeah, I think Detroit could win that one because the Ravens just haven't looked good on really either side of the ball. But yeah, Lamar just did not look that good this weekend. I do factor in for both these teams. Travel definitely hurt them, I think a little bit, but you still gotta play. Commanders on the road beat the Falcons 24-16. Um, Sam Howell, man, he might be, he's becoming really really good. Desmond Shitter, 3 picks in this one. He was, oh my god, he was fucking horrible. But Sam Howell, man, he's becoming, into that. I think he's creeping into that top 15 of conversation for quarterbacks in the league right now.
Yeah, I think Sam Howell's all right. I think he's right around that average to maybe a little bit below average. I mean, top end quarterbacks are tough to come by, and I think Sam Howell is solid. I'm not sure if he's going to be the QB for the future for the Commanders, but he definitely showed up in this game. Yeah, Desmond Shitter, man. Atlanta's got to draft like Quinn Ewers or Drake May or something, man. The upcoming draft, they cannot roll with him, man.
Yeah, I don't know who they're gonna roll out with Atlanta for next year, but yeah, Desmond Ritter's just here for the year, and that's gonna be about it for him. They're definitely, I think, definitely gonna take a quarterback in this one. I don't know who, but there's tons of good quarterbacks coming out this year, so that's going to be very interesting when we talk about that in the future. Seattle went into Cincinnati and they lost 17-13. This was a big win for the Bengals. I picked the Seahawks to win this one. They've been performing a lot better than the Bengals, but this was a really big win for the Bengals. Um, you know, Joe Burrow looked pretty good. Geno Smith just had a bad day, man.
Yeah, man. I actually did take the Bengals in this one. I thought that this is the game they had to bounce back, and um, Seattle's a great team, so it was a nice big win for them. Starting to creep back in there. I know that they still got a long ways to go. I think they're 3-3 now, um, but we'll see how they fare the rest of the season moving forward.
Yeah, they have a pretty tough schedule ahead. But this was a nice bounce back game for Cincinnati. And Seattle just a tough loss. But I'm sure they'll bounce back. They've been fairly solid to start the season. Uh, Colts, they went down to Jacksonville. Jaguars won that one 37-20. Trevor Lawrence put on a clinic. He did throw a pick, but I mean he was very efficient outside of that. And Gardner Minshew, man, 3 picks in this one. I believe one of them was a pick six too. I don't remember. I was watching the game, but yeah, it was just a really bad game for the Colts, and not having Anthony Richardson, I think, is really going to hurt them. I know Minshew isn't bad, or well, isn't necessarily the worst quarterback in the league right now, but he's just yeah, he's not going to be the answer long term for Indy, but he's here for the next at least 3 more games.
Yeah, and I was actually hearing rumors that Anthony Richardson could be shut down for the season. Um, we'll have to see how that goes. But yeah, Jacksonville just handled business, man. I mean, they're the better team for sure. We'll see how Trevor Lawrence can do moving forward as well, and see if Jacksonville can get back in this big playoff race.
Yeah, if Richardson is out for the rest of the season, then I mean Jacksonville was already the betting favorites to win this division, and I think as time goes on, I think the Jags are going to get a lot better. So we'll see on that one, but yeah, I mean this was a win that the Jags desperately needed if they do seriously still want to win this division. The Panthers, man, on the road in Miami, they lose 42-21. Man, the memes just continue. At one point, I saw the score. I think it was like 14-0, Carolina. But yeah, just and Bryce Young didn't necessarily play a bad game. I mean, he can't see over his offensive line, but it doesn't really matter. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, it was a tough one for the Panthers, man. I was actually seeing a video online. Some guy he's a Panthers fan. He's like, "Yeah, it's the worst team that the Panthers have had since they went 1-15, tanked for Cam Newton. Like, they are awful, man." He's like, "Just sell everyone, restart, rebuild, except for Bryce Young, since they drafted him first overall." So I think I gotta agree, man. Carolina's just down in the trenches right now.
so if Carolina goes 0-17, which which is very difficult to do in the NFL. I feel like the
Yeah.
Panthers are still going to get a win at some point. It's the NFL. It's going to happen, right?
Mhm.
You're going to lose to bad teams. It happens. But you know, if they do get that number one overall pick, who are they going to take? I mean, if
Yeah.
if I'm the
Actually, they don't have their pick this year.
oh,
Remember they traded for
that's right.
Chicago.
That's
They don't
right.
even
I
have their
forgot about
pick.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They
So
don't even have their pick. So they're
yeah,
not even tanking for anything. They don't
right.
even have their pick because they traded to get
Yeah,
Bryce Young.
yeah, that's right. I completely forgot about that. So yeah, I don't know what the Panthers are gonna do then, man. But they desperately need a lot of help. Minnesota went on the road to Chicago. They win 19-13. This was a pretty ugly game. Um, you know, Kirk Cousins, didn't look all that stellar against a really, really bad Chicago defense, which kind of just tells you just how bad that Minnesota offense has been so far to start the season. Um,
Yeah.
but they did Justin Jefferson play or no? I don't.
No, he's out.
Yeah, yeah,
He's out like 4 to 6 weeks. So that
yeah.
that
That
really hurts the
yeah, that
offense.
definitely hurts them then. And obviously Justin Fields is out, so Badgett was in, and he just he didn't look all too great. He went 10 for 14 and threw a pick. But yeah, I mean, this was a game that Minnesota really should have dominated because Chicago's defense is one of the worst in the league right now. But yeah, it was just it was not a fun game to watch because really neither offense could really do anything.
Yeah, for real, man. It was tough. And Chicago, man, they might have the number one and number two pick this year, man. Like we were saying earlier in the season, like it's crazy.
Yeah, they'll probably get Caleb Williams and well, unless he decides he wants to play another
Marvin
year
Harrison
because
Jr.
yeah, yeah, they could get Marvin Harrison Jr. Which if I was the Panthers and I had my pick, that's who I'd be taking if I was them. Get them something on that receiving end. But yeah, it was just an ugly game to watch. Speaking of ugly games, though, man, the Browns hosted the 49ers and they won 19-17. Brock Purdy did not look good at all.
Yeah,
He's like I said, he's a fraud. Um, Walker didn't look good either at quarterback for the Browns, but uh, you know, this was just one of those games that you're gonna lose to bad teams. Cleveland's defense isn't bad by any means, but their offense hasn't been good at all, and they were able to pull
yeah.
out the W.
Yeah, it's tough for the 49ers. I will say this is really no excuse, but they did lose their three best offensive players in the game. McCaffrey, Trent Williams, and Debo all went out hurt. So, you know, maybe that had something to do with it, but, you can't lose to the Browns. So I know it was definitely a tough loss, but, you lose to those bad teams. But I think that those guys will all be back, and we'll see how they respond.
Yeah, you take away all the weapons, and suddenly Brock Purdy is garbage. What do I tell you, man? He's a fraud, man. He really is a fraud. Texans hosted the Saints. They win 20-13. Um, you know, both both these quarterbacks in this game didn't play all too well. I mean, Derek Carr threw 50 passes, which is just insane.
Yes.
But he also had a pick, not ideal, obviously. But Stroud, he didn't look all too impressive like he has in the first few weeks of the season.
Yeah, this was definitely Stroud's weakest game that he's had so far, but at least they were able to pull out the win with him not playing as great as he could have.
It was I think last week is actually probably Stroud's worst performance. I think this week was a little bit better. But yeah, I mean, two weeks in a row after a really strong start, just of things just not clicking. Um, he threw it to Nico Collins quite a bit. Um, that just it's still a weird connection between those two right now. But yeah, Texans handled business. I believe the Saints were favored in this one too. Yeah, they were favored by two. So, but I also picked the Texans to win this one. So yeah, very happy about that result. The Raiders hosted the Patriots. They win 21-17. This might have been toilet bowl of the week right here. I mean, Mac Jones is horrible. Jimmy G's washed up. Low scoring
Yeah.
game. Nothing really happened, man. This was just a really bad game to watch, just like the Minnesota Chicago game.
At least the Patriots didn't get blown up by over 30 this game, though. So at least they,
That's true.
at least they were respectable. But man, they said it's the first time the Patriots are 1-5 since 1995, man. So finally, after all these years of them being at the top, man, they're finally losing, which I love seeing. I love seeing that dynasties fall, man.
Yeah, you just hate to see it. You just hate to see it, man. But no, I mean Mac Jones is clearly not the answer in New England, and
No.
Bill Belichick every single week showing that it was all on Tom Brady, man. It really was. Rams hosted the Cardinals. They win 26-9. Stafford looked really good in this one. He went 15 for 24. Cooper Kupp had a really nice touchdown catch. Um, and seeing Stafford pass it, being back and basically playing like he was in his prime years when he was in Detroit. Um, it was really good to see, Stafford performing that well after kind of a slow start to the season.
Yeah, definitely one of Stafford's best games so far this year. Cup's coming back, and he did great. And it is the Cardinals, not a great team, but they were able to take care of the bad team there and get the W.
Yeah. Jets, they host the Eagles and they upset them 20-14. And this was a bad loss for the Eagles, man. They couldn't afford it. And talk about coaching malpractice. They had, I think it was like 2 minutes left. Just punt the ball. If you pin them deep enough, right? They have to go all that way in short time, and you're playing Zach fucking Wilson. Like, come on, man. That is very bad coaching right there. To end up losing this game.
Yeah, man, the Eagles, they did not look good. They really haven't looked as good as I thought they would this year. They definitely have had a lot of close games already, and they finally come up with the loss. Again, we'll see how they do. It's a big game for them this week against Miami. That's going to be a crazy good matchup, so we'll see how the Eagles do in that one. But yeah, definitely a tough loss for them.
The last 2 weeks leading up to this week, very close calls with the Commanders and with the Rams, and then they finally lose to the Jets. Now, look, the Jets have still one of the best defenses in the league, so it's hard to score against them. But man, you got to do a lot better, and not have these piss poor coaching calls. Bills and the Giants. Giants came into Buffalo. They lose 14-9. There was a fight in this game, so that was fun to watch. But just neither team looked right, I guess you could say. I mean, now look, we know the Giants are fucking horrible, but the Bills just another week of just not playing their best ball.
Yeah, that game was very tough to watch. Saw a little bit of the first half and just pretty much decided not to watch. I mean, it was a pretty boring game, other than the fight, like you said. But Bills at least come out with the win, so at least they can take that away. But not a great performance by them.
No, not great at all. Josh Allen didn't look all too great. Yeah, and it's just you know, and well, the Giants just suck. So obviously, I was actually kind of rooting for the Giants to win this one. It would have just been funny to see the Bills lose to the Giants, but it happens. And then lastly, last night, Cowboys beat the Chargers 20-17. Um, it was a pretty close game the entire way through. But the Cowboys able to pull off the W. Justin Herbert looked pretty good for the most part. He had that one pick, but both these teams really didn't put on a really good performance. I know LA's offense isn't necessarily explosive, but their defense held Dallas to only 20, which is quite impressive in its own right.
Yeah, man. Chargers just can't get it done in prime time, man. Tough loss. I know you said Herbert did pretty well. I really didn't feel like Herbert did that well, man. That late interception was tough. It was a close game though, but yeah, Chargers just didn't really look that good. And speaking about a fight, man, pregame Austin Eckler got his head taken off, man. Pretty crazy moment there.
Yeah, I didn't see that pregame, but I kind of gotta watch that to see what exactly happened. But I heard about it, so I'm interested to see what all happened. So that is your weekend review of the NFL. We're gonna quickly do a power rankings blitz. So moving up into the top 10 from 12th last week, the Cleveland Browns break in. Obviously the big upset win against the Niners. Um, you know, this is a team. Their defense has been playing very, very good football. The offense hasn't been the best, but I could see them on that edge. 10th, 11th maybe. But this isn't a bad spot for them.
Yeah, I actually think it was pretty solid since they beat the 49ers this week. I mean, they got to move up. I mean, they can't move down from 12 after winning against probably the best team in the league. So I think 10 is respectable.
Yeah, it's respectable enough. Moving up one spot, the Ravens are now ninth. Obviously, they beat the Titans in London, so this was it was a good win for them. The Titans aren't necessarily good, but they've moved up to ninth in these rankings, and it's about where I'd put them, right around that ninth, 10th place.
Yeah, I think the Ravens right there is fine. Hopefully they move down next week when the Lions beat them. But yeah, Ravens at 9. I think that's a solid spot.
Yeah, I like how you said when the Lions beat them too. Staying at 8th, the Dallas Cowboys. Yeah, this one I agree with too. I mean, their win over the Chargers wasn't all that impressive. The offense hasn't been the greatest so far this year. So, yeah, I'm fine with them staying at 8. There are a lot of teams that are ahead of them, but there's also a lot of teams that really are below them. And, yeah, I think 8's pretty good here.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's solid. Not a crazy win, and definitely feel like there's still better teams above them. So I think 8's fine.
Yeah. Moving down one spot to number 7, Buffalo. I agree with this one. They didn't play very well against a really bad Giants team. And they gave hope to the Giants, which you can't do that. If you really want to be a very competitive team in the NFL, you got to beat these bad teams by a lot and not give them hope. And yeah, they gave the Giants a lot of hope in this one. Yeah, I think moving them down is pretty good.
Yeah, I think so too. I definitely feel like they can't be any lower than they are though, because I would definitely take them over the Cowboys, the Ravens, and the Browns right now. So I think that's a solid spot.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great spot for them. I would definitely put them ahead of the Cowboys, like all these teams that they're ahead of. Yeah. Moving up one spot, Jacksonville Jaguars at number 6 here. Yeah, like I said, most of these I pretty much agree with. I mean, they've been performing very well. Jacksonville now 4-2. Um, and they continue to get better each week, which is really all I'm looking at in Jacksonville because they are still the favorites to win that division, and they should be. I mean, they're the best performing team in that division right now, despite Indy's success so far in this season.
Yeah, I think Jacksonville's fine at number 6 there. I'm just curious now to see how they're going to rank the 5-1 teams. Since we have 5-1 teams, we'll see how the rankings go for them.
So dropping down 3 spots from last week, Philly. They're down to number 5. Um, I kind of agree here. That was a really bad loss against a really bad Jets team. And, there's, some, you know, coaching malpractice in this one. And it shouldn't have come down to the Jets even being able to win this one. If they just, did what they were supposed to do inside of 2 minutes and just punt the ball. You give the Jets, who have no timeouts, you know, basically no time to run down the field. But just bad coaching decisions here, and yeah, I think this is pretty fair to them.
Yeah, I think so too. I think they're the most out of sync or the least consistent team of the 5 that are left. They definitely have the talent to compete with any of these top teams, but yeah, just getting the coaching figured out at points at the end of the game, and hopefully, see how Jalen Hurts can come back from this loss.
Yeah, the Eagles need to fix a lot of things. They've had a lot of close calls against some teams that are a lot worse than them, and then they finally lose to the Jets. I mean, that's you can't be doing that. Moving up only one spot to number 4, the Detroit Lions. Now, this I don't agree with, and it's not my bias, but they've beaten Kansas City, who was ahead of them, and you know they've performed a lot better than Kansas City, who's ahead of them. I mean, this is I will put Detroit at number 3, and I would swap down Kansas City to number 4. But yeah, I mean, definitely Lions are definitely a top 5 team right now. They're obviously tied for first now in the entire NFC, which is a conversation that I don't think anyone expected the Lions to be in. Uh, I definitely thought Eagles and the Niners were the two, one of the two, whoever won their game against each other this year, that'd be the number 1 seed. But now you're talking about the Lions possibly, and they have the 31st hardest schedule remaining this year. So the Lions very well could make it to the number 1 seed in the NFC.
Yeah, I think so too. I would put the Lions at number 3 as well. I think Kansas City, because they beat them head to head. I mean, and has Kansas City really beaten anyone that spectacular? Besides, they beat up on the Bears, they barely beat the Broncos. So if they had another impressive win on their resume, I think that maybe you could put them ahead of the Lions. But since they really don't, I think the Lions should be ahead of them.
I think this is a bit of bias from NFL.com because they're the Super Bowl champs. They're not performing very well. How are you going to put a team that has the head-to-head loss and hasn't been blowing teams out like the Lions have? Uh, you know, you can't put that team ahead. At number 3, again, I disagree with this one. Is Miami Dolphins? They should be ahead of Kansas City because they're actually doing things. They're blowing teams out. They're making bad teams look bad. And yeah, I mean, look, the Dolphins have been. I mean, I think they're the betting favorite right now to win the entire AFC. They have been performing very, very well. Now, yes, they lost to the Bills, but they're still performing at an elite level. Tua has been incredible so far to start the year. And so, yeah, I think Miami should be at this number 2 spot and not at number 3.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that it's just tough because I feel like now, I mean, Kansas City and San Francisco are 1 and 2, but the San Francisco lost. I mean, have they thrown them from the top spot? And I don't think Kansas City should be number one right now. So I would, I don't know. Miami might even be number one too because I mean the Bills. That's a tough loss. It's probably the toughest team that has beaten one of these top teams. You know, um, the Bills. I would say, like I said, toughest loss or the hardest loss of the five teams that have a loss. So yeah, Miami, man, we'll have to see how they go moving forward.
Yeah, I don't know what these guys are looking at. Kansas City's at number two. They have no red zone offense at all. Lots of turnovers this year. Um, they lost to the Lions, so just head to head, you'd put the Lions ahead of them naturally. And yet, something's not right in Kansas City. I don't know what it is with that offense, but just something isn't right, especially when they get down to the red zone.
Yeah, for real, man. Just the offense doesn't look as explosive as it did last year, and a lot of people thought last year would be the year that it wasn't going to be because they lost Tyreek Hill last year. But their offense looked great last year still, and this year just not up to what their standards usually are.
I mean, yeah, struggling in most of these games that they've won so far. They've struggled in four of these games, and it's just you should beat up on the Broncos like you did the Bears if you're Kansas City, and they just didn't. They did not look good. They haven't looked good at all this season outside of the Chicago game. But again, it is Chicago, so there's that. So yeah, and then lastly, at number one still is San Francisco. Now I know we said they're gonna stay at number one until someone beats them, but who are you gonna still put ahead of them though? That's the real question. I mean, you could maybe argue Miami and maybe Detroit, but you know, it was just a bad game for the Niners that lost all their weapons, so that obviously hurts them a lot. Brock Purdy's still a fraud. Jake Moody missing the field goal. That was you know, not fun to watch, especially as a former Michigan fan who just that guy used to be Mr. Automatic for Michigan, man. I mean, um, but yeah, I mean, I think it's still fair to have the Niners here at number one despite the loss. Um, you know, until I think really until we see a really good team beat them, they might still stay at number one here.
Yeah, what? That's kind of crazy, man. I mean, you would think with the worst team beating them that they would drop them further to losing to such a. But I mean, the Browns aren't that bad though. But like you said too, and I mentioned earlier that their weapons did get hurt in the game, so that definitely hurt them. I do still think that the 49ers have the best odds of anyone and still have the best team, so I can see why they're still at number one. But just doesn't feel right that the number one team lost and they're still number one. So it's like, where do they go from here?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, you could probably argue Miami to be at that number one spot. Maybe Detroit, but it's just one of those things where it's just like there's so many teams that could be at that number one spot right now because of this loss. But it ain't Kansas City. Kansas City should not be at number two. That's my biggest disagreement with that entire thing. So that wraps that up. So we're gonna get to some college football now. And Michigan, man, 52-7 over Indiana at the Big House. Just another elite level performance from Michigan.
Yeah, I mean, took care of business. I mean, um, Indiana's not good, and they came in and did what they needed to do.
Yeah, and Donovan Edwards finally got his touchdown this week. This was the week it finally happened, which was Blake Corum was super hyped when it finally happened. I think Donovan Edwards after the first couple weeks of not getting anything has just really looked bad, and then I think this might be a little bit of confidence to him on that. Georgia beat Vanderbilt 37-20 on the road. Brock Bowers went out. And yeah, we're gonna get into that in a little bit. In the rankings blitz for this week. But yeah, no, not a lot of good things in Georgia right now when you have your cheat code no longer on your offense, which is not good to see. But yeah, Georgia still handled business over Vanderbilt. I believe, yeah, they were 32.5 point favorites, so obviously they didn't even come close to covering. Vanderbilt played them pretty hard though, but yeah, no Brock Bowers, and that offense kind of really started to fall apart after that.
Yeah, man. That is gonna be a big loss for him.
Yeah, he's out at least until the end of the regular season. But we could see like who was that Ohio State receiver last year who they kept pushing back the deadline each week pretty much. Was that Nabuka last
I
year?
think so.
He
I
he
think
was
so.
out, and then they're like, oh yeah, he'll be back after the regular season, and then they kept pushing it back, pushing it back, pushing it back. So yeah, uh, Ohio State went into Purdue, and they blew the doors off of them, 41-7. Now, that said, you might think on paper, Ohio State, blew them out really hard, whatever. Ohio State's offense, there's still something just not right in that offense right now. I don't know what it is, but there's just something that's just not clicking 100% with Ohio State's offense right now. That said, their defense looked really good. Granted, Purdue's offense is garbage, especially compared to what it was last year. But yeah, Ohio State got the job done.
Yeah, and we'll have to see, man. I mean, the big Penn State game's coming up with them, so um, that'll be the real test for Ohio State.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting this weekend and we'll get into that on Thursday's episode, man, because I have some bold predictions for this week. Uh, Florida State hosted Syracuse. They won 41-3, and man, what a game from Florida State. Um, Keon Coleman had an incredible game. Nine receptions for 140 yards and a touchdown. Yeah, I know, man. It hurts you a lot as a Sparty fan to see him doing this.
Yeah, yeah, man. It's definitely tough, but I mean, Florida State, man. I mean, just took care of business this week. I know some people were like, maybe Syracuse is on the upset alert. I know they were, um, not too big of underdog in this game. It was within 20 points, I believe. So, but yeah, Florida State came out punching, man, and took care of business.
Yeah, after a couple pretty slow weeks for Florida State, they finally bounced back and put up a really good performance. Bama hosted Arkansas. Arkansas almost pulling off the upset. Bama winning 24-21. Man, I was praying to God Arkansas won this game. Fuck Bama, but yeah, they were able to get it done, man.
Yeah, man. Can't believe, you know, Bama, man. Just wish they would lose again, but it's tough.
Yeah, it was very very tough game. You hate to see it, but Utah hosted Cal. Um, they win 34-14. They finally played Bryson Barnes as starting QB for Utah, and the offense actually was productive for once when they do that. It's almost like having your quarterback that's really good at passing can make your offense better. Goofy how that works. They beat Cal 34-14, like I said. Bryson Barnes, he didn't throw for a touchdown, but he was able to get the ball moving down the field, and that's all you really need, uh, especially against a pretty bad Cal team.
Yeah, nice win for Utah. Not much of a challenge by Cal, so easy win for them.
Shutout alert. Penn State wins 63-0 over UMass. Look, UMass is a dog shit team, but holding anyone to a shutout in football is very very hard to do. And Penn State was able to do it. Look, they haven't played, the greatest teams offensively, but I still believe they're one of the best defenses in the country. I mean, they have one. They easily have one of the best defenses for sure. They're definitely top five, but they haven't played any good offenses. But yeah, 63-0 in this one. Just a crazy score.
Yeah, I mean, They were favored by over 40, and they took care of UMass, man. UMass, rip UMass.
Yeah, rest in fucking pieces. Oh man, this was an all-time classic this weekend. Oregon goes into Washington.
Yeah.
They lose 36 to 33. They had an opportunity to win it, um, but Washington had opportunity to close this game out and not even give Oregon a chance. And they were inside the 1 yard line on two separate plays on a a first and goal situation, right? On a goal line situation, and both times they decided, or two of these plays, they decided to just try and run a dive or power run play instead of just going for the hardest play to stop in very short yardage situations, which is the QB sneak. I don't know why teams don't do this anymore, man. It's very confusing to me why no one runs a QB sneak in these, fourth and inches situations, or in this case for Washington, it was a fourth and inches situation, but it was also a first and inches situation on the goal line.
Yeah, they should have done that, man. Washington, yeah, definitely had some miscues, but yeah, that missed field goal at the end definitely got lucky a little bit, man. That was definitely a great game though to watch.
Yeah, it was an all-time classic, man. One of the best wins this entire season uh, for any ranked program. And Oregon was driving down the field, and then Road Bo Nix showed up and decided he stopped, making good passes. But
Yeah.
Penix played a very good game as well, and Bo Nix did play a pretty good game up until that last, minute of the game where he just, turned into Road Bo Nix again. Tennessee hosted Texas A&M. They win 20-13. They gave Texas A&M a lot of hope in this game. Texas A&M is not a good team right now, and I heard that they might be firing Jimbo Fisher in Texas A&M at the end of the season, or even during the season.
Yeah, Texas A&M definitely has been underperforming. So, I mean, I could see it for sure. No one's safe.
No, you're really not, especially in that school. If you're not winning, man, you're not gonna be there for long. But yeah, Tennessee able to pull off the win. Joe Milton, former Michigan quarterback, doing what he always does and overthrowing a lot of guys. Just because, I mean, that dude has a fucking cannon. He just has no accuracy with it. Uh, Kansas went into Oklahoma State and they lost 39-32. This was a game I picked Kansas to win. Oklahoma State has not been good this year. And yeah, I mean, this was a game Kansas should have won, and they didn't. They did not perform very well at all, especially defensively.
Yeah, I thought this would actually be a pretty close game. I know Oregon State was, I think, actually favored in this game because they were at home. But yeah, I was watching this on when they were showing the updates, and I kept seeing this game was kind of going back and forth. So thought either team could take it, but Oklahoma State ended up pulling it out at the end. So definitely a tough one.
Yeah, it was a very very tough game for Kansas, and well, now they're out of the rankings. Louisville also got upset by Pitt
Man,
at home. This was just a very 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 bad performance from Louisville. I don't know what happened. I know they were riding the high from beating Notre Dame, and now they just lose to Pitt. I think you know Pitt's horrible. I just don't know what happened with Louisville this week, man. They just broke down completely.
yeah, Louisville, get them out the rankings, man. That was just awful.
Yeah, Arizona went into Washington State and beat the fucking piss out of Washington State. They win 44-6. Washington State was number 19 going into this game. They're out of the rankings now too, I believe, after this really bad loss.
Yeah.
I mean, Arizona, they put up a good fight against USC, forcing three overtimes. And like I said, their defense is really really good this year. Their offense hasn't been the greatest at times, but but Washington State's defense has also been really really bad. So I just Yeah, man, this was kind of embarrassing for Washington State.
Yeah, it was really embarrassing. Just what an awful performance. Game blown out that bad.
Yeah, especially when you were a heavy favorite in this game too. I believe they were double-digit favorites, right? No, they were just only 7.5 point favorites. Um, but yeah, just not a good performance at all. LSU hosted Auburn. They won 48-18. But Peyton Thorne is fucking hilariously bad, man. I know you're glad he's out of MSU, but
Yeah.
um, speaking of MSU, man, we'll
Well,
we'll get to
tough
that.
loss.
But yeah, no, LSU took care of business, and yeah, Notre Dame, they exposed USC.
Three
They
interceptions
finally
by
did it.
Caleb Williams. Crazy.
Caleb Williams looked horrible in this game, and
Honestly, man, he might have took him out of the Heisman, man. I think Caleb Williams has no shot for the Heisman now after that performance.
I think he still does. You know, quarterbacks are gonna have bad days, right? That was just a really bad day for him. I think he'll bounce back this week, honestly. But yeah, Sam Hartman actually looked competent for Notre Dame for once, which was really good to see as well. Um, Notre Dame handled business though, at home too. But yeah, they really exposed how bad USC's defense really is.
Yeah, bad.
And then number 12, North Carolina hosted Miami. They win 41-31. This was a really good game to watch. This was fun. Drake May, man, I think he's the favorite right now to win the Heisman. He's at least if I was a voter, I'd be voting for Drake May because he has just been incredible so far this year. 4 touchdown passes in this one, man. 4.
Yeah, I Drake May's been great. I personally would have Michael Penix for sure though for the Heisman, but Drake May is definitely a top candidate, man. And he'll go high in the draft as well when time comes. I'm glad that North Carolina, man, they're seeing some success in football, man. Uh, Definitely interesting to see.
Yeah, another one of those basketball schools that are actually performing pretty well in football right now. But Drake May is a unicorn, man. I think he's like 6'4". Um, he can do everything. He can run. He can pass. He's got a very accurate arm. He has a ton of arm talent. I think he could go number one overall, especially if Caleb Williams has a pretty bad rest of the season. But we'll have to see on that one. Kentucky hosted Missouri. They lose 38-21. Missouri they've been in and out of the rankings. But they beat Kentucky, who are frauds. Look, they have not been that good this year. They go down to 5-2 now. They beat a ranked Florida team who shouldn't have been ranked, then they lose to an unranked Missouri team. So this was a tough loss, but a good win for Missouri.
Yeah, man, solid win for Missouri. We'll see if they're ranked next week, and yeah, Kentucky, man, just not doing so well after that Georgia game.
No, not at all. Number 15, Oregon State hosted UCLA. They win 36-24. And yeah, Dante Moore looked horrible after a pretty good start to his young career. He threw 3 picks in this one. Didn't look good. DJ Uyunglele, he looked pretty good in this one. He went 14 for 24, but threw for almost 300 yards. So doing that on 14 completions is quite impressive. Oregon State obviously just handled business in this one though.
Yeah, I thought UCLA was going to take this one, man. I thought that they would, it was in Oregon State, but thought UCLA had a good shot at this one, and just didn't happen. Oregon State came out and played pretty good.
Yeah, I think we both picked UCLA in this one too. I thought UCLA would get the upset, but Oregon State did exactly what they needed to do in this one, and an impressive win. And then last ranked game of the week, number 17 Duke hosted NC State. They win 24-3. Look, NC State's not a good team. Obviously, Duke's without their starting quarterback. But the guy who's standing in, Bellin, he went 4 for 12. He threw a pick. He didn't look all too good, but what gave Duke really what they needed was the ground game this week. Um, so yeah, but Bellin did throw 2 touchdown passes on those 4 completions, so that's not that bad. But Duke did a lot of their moving on the ground in this one. So that wraps up your top 25 matchups this week, and now we're gonna move into the rankings. I'm just gonna kind of roll through these as fast as I can here. So UCLA at number 25 dropped 7 spots after this loss. I think that's fair. I think they're still a really really good team. Iowa was not ranked. They're at number 24 now. Tulane's back into the rankings at number 23, and then Air Force has made their way into the rankings after beating a pretty decent Wyoming team. Uh, they're up at number 22, and then Louisville also dropped 7 spots down to 21. Um, Look, a lot of these teams have been playing some pretty decent ball, especially the ones that weren't ranked last week. Air Force has been pretty good so far to start the year as well. I kind of agree with where everyone's at in this group of 5 here.
Yeah, Air Force, man. I wasn't aware that they were going to be anywhere near the rankings, so that's interesting to see. But the fact that Louisville and UCLA both dropped the same amount, man, that's not right. Pitt is so much worse than Oregon State, man. Louisville should have dropped a lot more. I would have flipped UCLA and Louisville's spots. I would have dropped UCLA maybe like 3 or 4 spots, and then dropped Louisville at like 25 again.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. Yeah, I would drop Louisville below UCLA. UCLA, now I know they have a worse record than Louisville, but yeah, maybe that's probably why Louisville's ahead. But yeah, Mizzou wasn't ranked last week. They're back and they're in the top 20. So they're sitting at 20th. LSU's at 19. USC dropped 8 spots to 18th. Tennessee gained 2 spots to 17th, and Duke went up just 1 spot. They're now 16th. I think the only disagreement I have with this one is Mizzou ahead or Mizzou behind LSU. Mizzou obviously has a better record, but I think LSU does have better wins. So that could be why, but I honestly would put Mizzou over LSU.
I think that for me, this one's kind of fine. LSU, Mizzou. I think it's so close. I don't mind LSU being above Mizzou, but we'll have to see how they play out the rest of the year. USC, man, I think they've been waiting to kind of drop USC because they were number 10, and Oregon, who had a loss, or maybe it wasn't Oregon. It was some other team that had a loss, was ahead of them in the rankings at some point. And they hadn't gotten a loss yet, so we'll have to see how USC bounces back though from their first loss.
It was Texas, who is still back, by the way. They were still ahead, but the last couple of weeks USC has dropped in the rankings. I think every week for the last like 4 or 5 weeks now. Or no, 3 or 4 weeks, they've been dropping at least 1 spot up until, obviously, this week, losing to Notre Dame. Speaking of Notre Dame, they gained 6 spots to go to number 15. Utah goes up 2 spots to go to number 14. Ole Miss stays the exact same. Obviously, I think they were idle this week. Yeah, they didn't play anyone this week, so obviously that's fine there. Oregon State gained 3 spots to go to number 12. And then Bama stays at 11 here. I got no arguments with this group at all.
Same. I think that's pretty much ranked as good as it's going to get at this time.
Yep. And now into the top 10 for the first time in a very long time is UNC. They gained 2 spots. Oregon dropped only 1 spot. They're below Texas now, who's at 8. Penn State, they dropped them a spot. which it makes sense because Washington's now at number 5, but OU dropped a spot at as well from number 5 to number 6. Um, I'd argue put Penn State over OU. Yes, OU has a better win, but Penn State, they got done a little dirty.
Yeah, it's tough, man, because Penn State dropped, of course, but I mean they had to put Washington up. I mean that 7-8 matchup, they had to put Washington above those teams for that impressive win. And since Oklahoma was ahead of Penn State already, I see why. But yeah, I definitely see the argument there for why they should be ahead. But yeah, Washington now in the top 5. We're interested to see now. What they can do to maybe propel themselves into the top 4 if they can.
Uh, Washington's got quite a few games ahead of now. They got to play some pretty bad teams first in Arizona State and Stanford before they go and play USC. But the meat of Washington's schedule now is towards the later end of this season. But they're at number 5. Florida State stays at number 4. OSU stays at number 3. Michigan got 16 first place votes, though, this week. They're still at number 2. And Georgia lost a bunch of first place votes. They're at number 1. Obviously, look, they lost Brock Bowers, who is a unicorn. Georgia is going to have to figure out something. Look, they're playing a pretty bad Florida team. They should probably win this one. But that said, without Brock Bowers now for the rest of the season, man, they might lose a game or two here to finish out the season. We'll have to see. But yeah, it's kind of not looking good for Georgia right now.
Yeah, man, I gotta agree. Like, Michigan might be taking that number 1 spot, man. They come up with an impressive win. Some more impressive wins, and Georgia, just kind of falls flat. Even if Georgia doesn't lose the games, like Michigan might get that number 1 spot, man.
Yeah, they very well might. And then Michigan State, man, losing to Rutgers, it's a shame. It really is a shame. They did not
And
look good at all.
awful.
And then Michigan State ended up doing something to blow a big lead.
Yep, they blew an 18-point fourth quarter lead. But someone who I think even had it worse, man. Let's talk about the Colorado game, man.
Oh my God. Yeah, dude. Oh,
29-0 at half.
against Stanford.
Stanford.
Shador Sanders was selling promos for his merchandise, or tweeting promos for his merchandise, instead of focusing on what he needs to do in the second half. And then, what really gets me is Deion Sanders has the fucking balls to go out and say that his players don't love the game.
Yeah.
Like maybe.
It's crazy, man, because you kind of were on this when it started, but I say like the first 2 or 3 weeks, everyone was hyped for Colorado, and now it's like, man, no, everyone hates Colorado.
I mean, you can't go and blame your players not loving the game, quote unquote, on losing to Stanford that badly, that embarrassingly. Like maybe take the hat and glasses off, focus on fucking football, and maybe your team will not blow big games like this, big leads like this against really bad teams like Stanford. That's just embarrassing. That might be, out of all the coaching malpractices this week, that might be the biggest one right there. Instead of doing your job, being an actual good coach, no, you go and blame your players instead of taking the blame yourself. That's not nice. The players hate that, and you're not going to get players to play for you when you're saying shit like that.
Mm-hmm.
Just fucking embarrassing for any coach to do that. So yeah, that wraps up your college football for the week, or for the review and your rankings blitz. And you said there was a small trade in the NBA, so let's talk about that real quick.
Yeah, so I brought up, I think it was maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, the incident with Kevin Porter Jr. here. He was on the Houston Rockets, and he was accused of, beating on his girlfriend, like a lot of these controversial players are known for. So, of course, Houston was like, he's talented, but we can't have him on our team. So they traded him to the Oklahoma City Thunder for Victor Oladipo, Jeremiah Robinson Earl, and gave away Kevin Porter Jr. and a couple second-round picks. But the Thunder are actually going to be waiving Porter Jr., so I think that this was kind of a win-win for both teams. So, the Houston gets off Kevin Porter Jr., and OKC, they get more picks. They have 37 picks now in 7 years coming up. It's just crazy the amount of draft picks they've stockpiled. And then they got off of Victor Oladipo and Jeremiah Robinson's contracts, so builds more cap space for them. So definitely feel like it was a good move for both sides. Kevin Porter Jr., he has the talent to play in the NBA, but he was just too much off the court shit that he's done that I don't know if he comes back from this one, man. I think that he might be out the league pretty soon, might be playing overseas.
That's a big yikes. I know I've heard about what he's done off the court. Terrible fucking piece of human garbage he is, but yeah. It's an interesting deal to say the least. But there was a minor NHL trade today too. It was with Pittsburgh and Vancouver. Pittsburgh received Jack Rathbone and Carl Plasic, and Vancouver received Mark Freeman and Ty Glover. A defenseman for a defenseman and a forward for a forward. This basically for Pittsburgh was kind of a cap relief thing. Made their team a little bit younger too, which helps long term, but Pittsburgh's in a lot of troubles with the aging core and in some pretty bad cap situations still. But yeah, I think this is a more of a change of scenery type of deal that happened for both these teams. Obviously you're trading a defenseman for a defenseman and a forward for a forward. No one's really gaining anything here. So yeah, just a interesting little trade that happened today, actually.
Yeah, so that was definitely interesting as well.
So I think that wraps it up. We do have an NLCS. The Phillies beat the Braves in that game on, I think it was Thursday when we were recording. That was that game 4. But yeah, it was. So yeah, that there's that to talk about. I think the games, at least today, was just it's 8-0 Phillies right now at the bottom of the 7th. Nick Castellanos, man, he's been performing very well these last few games. I think it's 5 home runs in the last 3 games from him.
Yep, I mean everyone on that team has just been going crazy, man. Turner started the game off today with a home run. Schwarber's got 2 hits and 2 RBIs. Harper's got on base and got a hit. Alec Boehm, 2 RBIs today. Same with Real Muto. Just their whole lineup, man, has just been clicking.
Lots of good performance from this team right now. Everyone is hitting.
Yeah, we'll get into it more in a future episode, but I mean, I think the Phillies have a really good chance to go back to the World Series.
Yeah, I really think they do. We'll get into this a little bit more on Thursday. I also believe, the Rangers right now are leading the series 2-0 over the Astros. Both these teams have the same record in the regular season, so it's kind of interesting there. But yeah, that kind of wraps up today's episode. So rate, review, subscribe. Help us out. Let us know what you want to hear, what you want to see. And Mike, you got anything else?
No, just please stay tuned for some future episodes here. Definitely going to be diving deeper into baseball with the World Series coming around. And then, of course, with football, always talking NFL and college football and just giving our thoughts on the games.
Yep. So, anyways, thank you guys so much for listening, and we will see you guys on Thursday.